In the middle of the day, something inside in the middle of the day, something inside you quietly shifts. You might be sitting at your desk, or walking between tasks, or simply looking at your phone for a moment longer than you expected. And suddenly your mood feels different. Not terrible, just heavier. The energy you had earlier in the day seems to disappear without explanation. Tasks that normally feel simple now feel slightly more difficult. Your focus fades. Your thoughts become slower. Even small things begin to feel irritating. A message arrives that feels annoying. A minor mistake catches your attention. Someone says something slightly awkward. None of these moments are big enough to ruin a day, but together they begin to shape something subtle inside your mind. A quiet, emotional drop. You may notice it in strange ways. You start procrastinating on small tasks. You open your phone more often than usual. You stare at your screen without really processing what you're reading. It's not sadness exactly. It's not stress either. It feels more like a low emotional fog. And the strange part is that this shift often happens without a clear reason. You might even ask yourself why your mood changed in the first place. Nothing serious happened. The day is still normal, but the feeling remains. For many people, this quiet mood drop slowly spreads through the rest of the day. When your emotional state lowers, your mind starts interpreting everything through that new lens. Small problems feel larger. Motivation becomes harder to find. Even the idea of finishing the day feels heavier than it should. So people often try to push through it. They drink more coffee. They scroll for distraction. They try to force themselves back into productivity. But mood doesn't always respond well to force. Sometimes the mind simply needs a reset. In Japan, there are many small daily habits designed to gently reset emotional balance when the mind begins to drift downward. These habits are not dramatic routines. They do not require hours of meditation or long breaks from life. Most of them take only a few minutes, but they work because they interrupt the subtle emotional loops that keep a low mood in place. A small movement, a breath, a shift in environment, a tiny moment of reflection. Each one acts like a quiet reset button for the nervous system. And when these small resets appear at the right moment, something interesting happens. The emotional fog begins to lift, energy returns, clarity comes back, and the day continues without the quiet heaviness that was beginning to take over. But before exploring these habits, it helps to understand something important. When your mood suddenly drops during the day, it does not mean you are doing something wrong. In fact, it often means your brain is simply responding to signals that most people never notice. When a person suddenly feels their mood drop in the middle of the day, the first reaction is often quiet self-criticism. They assume something about them is wrong. Maybe they think they're losing motivation. Maybe they believe they're becoming lazy. Sometimes they even question their discipline or mental strength. After all, the day was going normally just a moment ago. Nothing dramatic happened, and yet the emotional shift still appeared. So the mind begins searching for an explanation. Why can't I stay focused today? Why do I feel so low energy? Why does everything suddenly feel harder? In many modern cultures, people are taught to expect constant productivity and steady motivation. The ideal version of a productive person seems to be someone who maintains the same level of energy all day long. But the human brain does not actually work that way. Energy naturally rises and falls throughout the day. Attention shifts. Emotions respond to small signals in the environment. Your mood is not a fixed state. It is more like a living system that constantly adjusts to what your brain and body are experiencing. This means that small things can influence it in ways we rarely notice. Mental fatigue can quietly lower emotional energy. Too much stimulation can overwhelm attention. Sitting still for too long can reduce mental alertness. Even small social interactions can create emotional tension that lingers longer than expected. Your brain is constantly interpreting these signals in the background, and when the system becomes slightly overloaded, it may respond by lowering energy and slowing your mental pace. This is not weakness. It is actually a form of protection. Your nervous system is trying to prevent burnout by reducing the pressure it places on itself. The problem is that many people misinterpret this signal. Instead of seeing it as a request for a reset, they try to force their mood back into productivity. They push harder. They add more stimulation. They pressure themselves to feel different. But emotional states rarely change through pressure. In fact, pressure often makes the feeling last longer. This is why many traditional routines, especially in cultures that value quiet balance, include small habits designed to gently interrupt emotional patterns. In Japan, daily life includes many subtle behaviors that act like emotional reset buttons. They are not labeled as psychological techniques. They are simply part of everyday living. A short walk, a moment of breathing, a small environmental change, a pause that gives the nervous system time to recalibrate. These habits work because they do not fight the mood directly. Instead, they shift the physical and sensory signals the brain is receiving. When those signals change, the nervous system naturally adjusts, and often, the emotional fog begins to lift without effort. The important thing to understand is this. When your mood suddenly drops during the day, it is not a failure of discipline or character. It is simply your brain sending a signal that something in your system needs a small reset. And the fastest way to create that reset is not through motivation. It is through small changes in the body itself. The first Japanese habits begin exactly there, with the body. Because when the body shifts, the mind often follows. One of the simplest ways to shift your mood is also one of the most overlooked: changing the state of your body. Most people assume mood exists only in the mind, as if emotions are separate from physical experience. But the nervous system does not make that distinction. The brain constantly reads signals from the body to understand how it should feel. Your posture, your breathing, your movement. All of these signals quietly shape your emotional state throughout the day. When mood begins to drop, the body often reflects it immediately. Shoulders begin to slump. Breathing becomes shallow. The body becomes still for long periods of time. And once this physical pattern appears, it reinforces the emotional state. Low energy posture tells the brain something important. Slow down. Conserve energy. But when the body changes, the brain receives new signals. The first Japanese habit that helps reset mood is incredibly simple: a posture reset. In many workplaces in Japan, people occasionally stand up for a moment, stretch their arms, or straighten their posture before continuing their work. This may seem like a small gesture, but posture strongly influences how the brain regulates alertness. When the spine straightens and the chest opens slightly, breathing becomes deeper and oxygen flow improves. Within seconds, the nervous system receives a different message: wake up, re-engage. The shift may be subtle, but even a 1-minute posture change can begin lifting the mental fog that appeared earlier. Another common habit involves something equally simple: walking. Short walks are extremely common during breaks in Japan. People step outside briefly, move through the environment, and return a few minutes later. The walk is rarely long, Sometimes it lasts only 5 or 10 minutes. But movement has a powerful effect on mood because it activates circulation and stimulates the brain's attention systems. When you move your body through space, your senses wake up. You notice light. You notice sounds. You notice the feeling of air and temperature around you. This sensory engagement interrupts the mental loop that was keeping your mood stuck. Even a short walk can create enough change in the body's chemistry to reset emotional balance. The third habit focuses on something even more subtle: breathing. In many Japanese mindfulness traditions, breathing is used as a way to gently return the mind to balance. Not through complex meditation techniques, but through simple pauses. When stress or emotional heaviness appears, the person stops for a moment and takes several slow breaths. Breathing in slowly, holding briefly, then releasing the breath completely. This pattern activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of the body responsible for calm and recovery. Within a minute or two, heart rate slows slightly, muscles soften, the brain begins shifting away from tension. These breathing pauses are not dramatic events. Often they happen quietly between tasks. No one around even notices, but internally, the nervous system receives a powerful signal that it is safe to relax again. What these first habits reveal is something important. Your mood is not only controlled by thoughts, it is deeply connected to the body. When posture changes, breathing deepens, or movement returns, the brain receives a completely new set of signals, and often those signals are enough to gently lift the emotional state back toward balance. But the body is only one part of the system. Sometimes resetting your mood requires changing something outside of you as well: your environment. And several Japanese habits focus exactly on that. Sometimes the fastest way to shift your mood is not by changing your thoughts or even your body, but by changing what your mind is surrounded by. The human brain constantly absorbs signals from the environment. Even when you are not paying attention, your senses are collecting information about light, sound, movement, and visual details around you. Over time, these signals quietly shape your emotional state. If the environment becomes chaotic or cluttered, the brain begins processing more information than it can comfortably handle. Small distractions appear everywhere. Unfinished items compete for attention. Visual noise slowly increases mental fatigue. This is why even a small environmental change can create a surprising emotional reset. In Japan, one of the most common habits for restoring mental clarity is something very simple: cleaning a small space, not an entire room. Not a full deep cleaning session, just clearing a surface, a desk, a small table, a corner of a room. Japanese culture places strong value on clean, uncluttered environments because visual simplicity reduces cognitive load. When fewer objects compete for attention, the brain relaxes. Your eyes see fewer unfinished signals. Your mind feels less pressure. And within a few minutes of clearing a space, many people notice their mental state becoming calmer and more focused. Another small habit that resets mood in Japanese daily life revolves around something even more gentle: tea. Tea preparation appears throughout Japanese culture, not only because of the drink itself, but because of the pace of the ritual. Preparing tea requires small, deliberate actions: heating water, holding a cup, pouring slowly. These movements naturally slow the rhythm of the body and mind. The warmth of the drink adds another layer of comfort. Warm liquids activate relaxation responses in the nervous system, helping the body release tension. For a few minutes, attention moves away from stress and toward a quiet sensory experience. You feel the warmth in your hands. You notice the aroma. Your breathing slows. The moment becomes simple, and simplicity often restores emotional balance faster than complex solutions. Another powerful habit involves something many people rarely allow themselves during a busy day: a true pause. Not a pause filled with scrolling through a phone or switching to another distraction. A pause without stimulation. In Japan, brief moments of stillness are sometimes used between activities. A person might sit quietly for a minute or two, allowing their attention to settle before continuing with the next task. At first, this kind of pause can feel unfamiliar. The modern mind is so accustomed to constant stimulation that silence can feel strange. But when the brain is given a moment without input, something important happens. The nervous system begins to reorganize itself. Thoughts settle. Emotional tension slowly releases, and the mind regains clarity. These micro-pauses act like tiny resets throughout the day. They prevent emotional overload from building too high. What these environmental habits reveal is something subtle but powerful. Your mood is not only shaped by what happens inside your mind. It is deeply influenced by what your senses experience. A cleaner space, a warm drink, a moment of stillness. These small environmental changes gently guide the brain back toward balance. But some of the most powerful Japanese habits work even deeper than that. They change how the mind interprets the events of the day itself. Sometimes the reason a mood stays low has nothing to do with the body or the environment. It comes from the way the mind is interpreting the day. The human brain has a natural tendency called negativity bias. This means that negative events, even small ones, receive more attention than positive ones. A single awkward conversation can stay in your thoughts longer than 5 pleasant interactions. One mistake can feel more significant than several things that went well. This bias helped humans survive in earlier environments by keeping attention focused on potential threats. But in modern life, it can quietly distort how the day feels. When mood begins to drop, the brain often starts searching for more evidence that something is wrong. You remember the small mistake from earlier. You replay something someone said. You think about tasks that are still unfinished. And without realizing it, your mind builds a narrative that the day is going badly. In Japan, many daily habits gently interrupt this pattern by redirecting attention toward balance. One example is the simple act of recognizing a small success. Not a major achievement, just one thing that went well. It could be finishing a task, helping someone with something small, handling a difficult moment better than expected. Even noticing a peaceful moment during the day can count. When a person pauses to acknowledge something positive, the brain receives new information that challenges the negativity bias. The day was not entirely difficult. Something worked. Something moved forward. This small mental shift helps restore emotional balance because it expands the brain's view of the day. Instead of seeing only problems, the mind begins noticing a more complete picture. Another Japanese perspective that supports emotional balance involves the acceptance of imperfection. In many aspects of Japanese culture, imperfection is not always treated as failure. Instead, it is often understood as a natural part of process. This mindset reduces the pressure people place on themselves throughout the day. When mistakes happen, they are seen less as personal flaws and more as moments within a longer path of learning. This attitude can reset mood almost instantly. If the mind stops interpreting every small mistake as a problem, emotional weight disappears. The awkward conversation becomes just a moment. The unfinished task becomes something that will be handled later. Tension fades. Emotional balance quietly tension fades. emotional balance quietly returns. These habits reveal something important. Your mood is not only shaped by events, it is shaped by how the mind organizes those events. A single small reframing can shift the emotional meaning of an entire afternoon. But there is one final Japanese habit that works in a completely different way. Instead of changing thoughts or environments, it changes something even more fundamental. Your senses. Sometimes the fastest way to reset your mood has nothing to do with thoughts, productivity, or even reflection. It comes from something much simpler: your senses. The human nervous system constantly reads information from the senses to determine whether the environment is safe, stressful, calm, or stimulating. Even when you are not consciously paying attention, your brain is quietly scanning the world through sound, temperature, smell, light, and touch. These signals influence emotional balance far more than most people realize. When the sensory environment becomes overwhelming, the brain remains slightly tense. Too much noise, harsh lighting, or constant stimulation can quietly push the nervous system toward fatigue. But when sensory signals change, the brain responds almost immediately. In Japan, many daily habits include small sensory experiences that gently calm the mind. One example is the simple act of stepping outside for a moment, feeling fresh air on your face, hearing distant sounds from the environment, seeing natural light or the movement of trees. These small sensory details reconnect the mind with the physical world around it. And when the brain shifts attention to these signals, the emotional state often resets naturally. Another common sensory reset involves water. Warm baths are deeply integrated into Japanese daily life, not only for hygiene, but also for relaxation. The warmth of water signals safety to the nervous system. Muscles soften, breathing slows, the body releases tension it may have been holding all day. Even something as simple as washing your hands with warm water can create a small version of this effect. The body experiences a sensory change, and the brain responds by relaxing. Other calming sensory cues appear in smaller forms as well. Soft lighting, the gentle scent of incense, the quiet sound of wind or rain. These signals communicate something subtle to the brain. There is no urgency here. You are safe. You can slow down. What makes sensory resets powerful is their speed. The nervous system reacts to sensory changes much faster than it reacts to logical thinking. You can spend a long time trying to think your way out of a low mood, but sometimes a small shift in what you see, hear, or feel can change the emotional state within minutes. This is why many Japanese habits focus on small sensory moments scattered throughout daily life. A few minutes of fresh air, the warmth of tea, the sound of quiet surroundings. Each one quietly tells the nervous system to return to balance. And when the nervous system returns to balance, the mind often follows without effort. Mood resets do not always require large changes. Sometimes the smallest sensory signal is enough to gently guide the brain back to calm. When people imagine improving their mood, they often picture something dramatic: a long break, a vacation, a major life change that suddenly removes stress and restores happiness. But the mind rarely works that way. Most emotional shifts during the day are small. They happen quietly, without a clear cause. And because they are small, the most effective solutions are often small as well. The habits we've explored are not powerful because they are complex. They are powerful because they gently interrupt the patterns that keep a low mood in place. A posture shift reminds the brain to wake up. A short walk changes the rhythm of the body. A deep breath slows the nervous system. A cleaner space reduces mental noise. A cup of tea creates a moment of calm focus. A brief pause gives the mind room to reset. Recognizing a small success balances the brain's tendency to focus on problems. Letting go of imperfections releases unnecessary pressure. A simple sensory change reconnects the mind with the present moment. Each of these habits may take only a few minutes, but together they reveal something important about emotional balance. Your mood is not fixed. It is constantly responding to signals from your body, your environment, and your attention. When those signals change, the emotional state often changes with them. This is why many traditional cultures developed small daily habits that gently maintain emotional balance throughout the day. They do not wait for mood to collapse before responding. Instead, they create regular moments of reset, moments where the nervous system can slow down, breathe, and return to equilibrium. If you occasionally feel your mood quietly drop during the day, it does not mean something is wrong with you. It simply means your brain is responding to the many signals it receives throughout modern life. Fatigue, information overload, small emotional tensions. All of these influences accumulate beneath the surface, and sometimes the mind simply needs a moment to recalibrate. The encouraging part is that this reset rarely requires hours of effort. Often it takes only a few minutes. A small change in posture, a breath, a walk, a pause, a quiet sensory moment. These simple actions act like gentle reset buttons for the nervous system. And over time, they teach the mind something important. Balance can always be restored, not through force, but through small signals that guide the brain back toward calm. The next time you feel that quiet drop in your mood, remember that it is not the end of the day. It may simply be the moment your mind is asking for a reset, and sometimes 10 minutes is all it takes to begin again.